Hello, I'm Ricky.
And I'm Joe, and this is Season 5, Episode 15 of the Beer and Broadband Podcast. No, this is not the Halloween episode. We missed that one through a series of unfortunate events. But this is our next to Halloween episode, slated to come out on November the 7th, 2022. And we're going to get right into it. We got some stuff about media servers, so Silicon on Demand, which is fun, and free speech. And we're going to start off by reviewing a fig wine that we made from some figs in Ricky's backyard. We didn't make it in Ricky's backyard. We made it at my house, but we got the figs from Ricky's backyard. Mm-hmm. So,
man, I'm really liking this.
Yeah, it's really good, right?
It is
Fantastic.
Really good. So we use the figs and some fig byproducts. I'd already turned some of the figs into things like fig butter and fig jam. So in terms of sugars, there's the figs, some white sugar and honey from when I made those derivatives, and then we also use pomegranate juice and then just some extra honey. So it's a good little mix, but man, it's come out really smooth, and it's got that really dark flavor that I like. Like, it's a sweetness, but it's that dark sweetness. If you've ever had like a red muscadine, it's kind of like in that realm. It's really good.
Yeah, it is very, very nice. It has a very good, flavor that enhances the figginess to it.
Yeah, I think that's my favorite thing. We've talked about this before, that I like a fruit wine that tastes like the fruit it's made of. And this very much does taste like kind of pomegranate and fig.
Yeah. So, here's a question. What do you think the ABV on this ended up being?
As smooth as it is, it still has some pretty intense legs, so I'm going to say like 14% plus.
Okay, you're in the money on that. It's 15.09% ABV. It ended up still being sweet though, at finishing at 0.033.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a fairly sweet wine, but we hit that because this is a 15%. The Lalvin D47 is supposed to bring out fruity esters and things like that. Its cap is right at 15%, so we
maxed it out.
Out.
It's definitely a sweet wine. It's not quite at that like dessert level. Mm-hmm. So like when I went to the state fair not long ago and was tasting sweet wines, they had some painfully sweet ones. We're not at that level. But yeah, it's definitely, if you prefer dry wine, this isn't yours.
Yeah.
But it's really good, especially if you like figs.
Yeah.
If you like figs and pomegranate, it really does nail those flavors well.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting because I remember when we first tasted it, we said, oh, it's a little watery.
Yeah.
So like some time really brought those flavors out.
Well, that and the second round of honey that I added.
Yeah, we did put more sweetener in, which I'm sure helped some, but just feel those flavors so much more pronounced than we did beforehand. And we didn't add any more of those flavors in. That's interesting.
What I'm saying is, so we added sweet, when you came over and we adjusted it, we added, it blew through all that. It started out at like a 9-10% ABV wine. It blew through that. It blew through the next amount that we did. That bumped it up to that 15.
Okay.
And then I added a little bit more, or that bumped it up to like 14. I added a little bit more, so it got step fed.
Okay.
And then adding the other thing that really helped is the tannins from the actual figs when you brought them over and we put them in. So, and there's no telling how much, because this thing could be a 17% ABV wine. It's 15 plus, and I only know it's at least 15% because we added those figs in, but it was that was in secondary, so it just added sugar to it.
Yeah.
And it pulped them up good.
Yeah. It's a little hard to measure those things because, when they're still solid in there, even if you mush them up, there's all that sugar that's not available in the liquid yet. So your gravity readings are never quite there. So I guess, that's a good point. It's at least 15.
Right.
We'll see how. We'll know tonight when I pop open a bottle how high the actual ABV is, based on how many glasses we can get through.
Yeah, I imagine it's not going to be that much, but I bottled it. I haven't labeled them yet, so Do you want to wait until they're labeled, or do you want to just like take a couple home now?
No, I think this is good enough. I need to bring this back to my wife.
Okay, that sounds good. I'm going to enjoy drinking that through this episode. So let's talk about Elon buying Twitter. And just to let you know, if you don't like it, you're fired. If you don't appreciate
I've heard
the
a lot
free
of people
speech.
have been let go.
Well, it's not just that. People are making memes about, if you don't like this new free speech that we're putting out here, you're fired for Twitter. I don't know if he actually said that or not, so I'm not going to put that out there. But what do you think about Elon buying Twitter?
It's real interesting. I think we'll all know a little bit more about it as the years go on, because they got into that whole legal battle and all this other stuff, and basically, like, did Elon want to buy Twitter or not to buy Twitter? We don't really know. He certainly wanted to in the beginning, but then there were problems with reported metrics. But then the judge said you have to buy it anyway, and like, it's a bunch of stuff going on with that. The more interesting part of the story is how many people have gotten up in arms about charging for whatever it was, the verification,
the blue check.
Yeah, I don't know what they actually call that.
I think it's called the blue check.
Well, yeah, but it's like there's a process. You have to be verified. It's like the verification or something like that.
It is a verification process, but it is the blue check mark. I think is what they're calling it, though.
Yeah, that's certainly what the little symbol is. But yeah, a lot of people are upset about that one. That you have to pay, like, to have that, and treating it like, well, now you have to pay for Twitter. And it's like, but nobody but like politicians and media people had check marks anyway. That was the whole point.
Yep.
It was like, this validates that this is the famous person they're pretending to be. So if you're a famous person, why do you care about $8 a month?
Well, they're also doing, so like the blue check is like a status symbol thing, the way that they're putting it out there, and then there's also going to be a verified thing. So you can get verified as being you without the check. Okay. But the check for the subscription is like a visual notification that you have paid the money and are verified.
Okay. Yeah, it just feels weird that people are so upset about it to me, because I guess because we're nerds, we're into video games and stuff like that, and that sort of thing. Like, you're a member of a video game forum and you have a colored text because you're a senior member or because you're a premium member or something like that. That's been around forever.
Yep.
So maybe to me it feels silly, and to other people who aren't, and maybe never been exposed to that, it feels weird. But how that's turned into you can't privatize free speech by charging me $8 for a question mark that doesn't stop me from using the platform, or a check mark that doesn't stop me from using the platform, feels a little weird.
Yeah, and I think there's also, so there's the concept, but this is really the topic for me. It's the free speech topic. The blue check mark and all that other hullabaloo are just distractors. I think ultimately Twitter is a social media platform. In my mind, there should be more regulations because of the problems that social media causes. But it's still a privatized company. Yeah. And that privatized company, by our laws, is treated by U.S. law. Shouldn't say by our laws, because we might have people from other countries that are listening to this, but by U.S. laws are treated like an individual. So they can use their own platform to say what they want to. Much like we have regulations on what is hate speech and being able to say things like that, I think that there should be regulations on these companies that says, one, they're not an individual, so they do have to follow certain rules, and then two, that these companies are set up so that they are probably, if they operate in the United States, they have to abide by certain laws that they don't restrict certain types of speech, or they don't elevate one type of speech over another. That said, in the ultimate of it, as legal goes today, as laws are, none of that matters. They're a privatized company that's treated as an individual. They can talk about and do things the way they want to, as long as it doesn't violate labor laws or violate some other criminal law. Yeah. So I don't. The reason this is a topic for me, bringing it back, the free speech part of it, the whole free speech is being destroyed because Twitter got bought out by Elon, or oh my God, we're going to get free speech now. We can say whatever thing we want to. N-word, 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 F-bomb, 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 F-bomb. People get up in arms on both sides of but this is a privatized company, not a open.
And one of the real problems with that is platforms do, in many legal aspects, have to only allow certain things on their platform. Twitter's so large, maybe it's not the best example, but I know, like when I was growing up, there were a lot of forums that were very open. You could do whatever you want, you could say whatever you want, and then they'd suddenly get locked down because somebody went too far, or some hosting platform changed or something, and it's like, well, this is a platform that you can communicate on, but because the person who runs it is treated as the individual, and this gets treated, almost pretty much everything that happens here gets treated as if they did it because they're on this thing that they own, then, things would get shut down, forums would go away.
But that's under the hate speech thing, right? Like, because there are certain things that you can't say, especially if they're running the U.S. I mean, in other countries, like, if we went to Iran, there's like lockdowns on just things that you can't say, right?
Yeah.
They don't have that concept of freedom of speech like that. In other countries like China, it's kind of the same thing. They have their own freedoms, but they don't have that like set of freedoms in that way. So this is not America is the freest place. But if we're talking about American law, are you referring to like the hate speech kind of thing? Because that is illegal to use hate speech to threaten people and to do things like that, or harassing language. Those are like legally, things that are problematic.
Not really. So again, because this was probably flavored from when I was young, I was on forums with lots of other young people. It would be things of like that nature. It's like, hey, this is a place with minors. That's maybe more an adult conversation. That's what's happening on this part of the forum.
Okay. You
can't do that. So now you're banned. And, again, where you would really see this is when it comes into that idea that, hey, maybe this is some video game forum and you guys are talking about things and there's that like off-topic section and something in off-topic gets a little bit too real. Well, hey guys, I got a call from like my local police department, or like they told me they'd been informed that this forum I own, and this is like me talking as if I was the forum admin. This is stuff they would tell us, is that, hey, we can't do that. I'm gonna have to shut that down.
So if it's in another country, that's very possible. In the U.S., unless it falls under one of those two, and sexual content towards minors does fall into like the harassment and illegal thing.
Yeah.
But unless it falls into one of those three things, either someone was lying to them, or they, were saying that as an excuse to say, I don't like this thing, I'm just going to shut it down and use laws.
Yeah, I mean, it happened on so many forums, and there were ones that were like seized. That like, that it was out of their control. But, again, with a place with a bunch of kids, it's always really easy to, hey, two people on the forum, really liked hanging out. And now they're DMing each other stuff. Yeah. And there's now stuff on our server that probably shouldn't be on our server. So it's that sort of stuff.
That sort of thing. And that falls into that, like, sexual predator, child, like, bad things kind of law. And that's, I mean, legit, right?
Yeah. But, and it is. But I guess that's kind of one of the things that I always look at this through, is that when we start talking about companies as people, it's really like the worst of both worlds.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the company is under an immense amount of pressure to keep certain things off their platform because they are directly considered responsible for it. Those people posting those things on those forums were not the people getting in trouble. It was the person that ran the forum, because they owned the platform. But then at the same time, you have all the stuff that goes on with like the tax laws that makes it so much easier for companies to not have to pay their fair share of taxes because they're treated like individuals. They're not treated like a corporation. So, it's a really weird mix, and maybe that's going off topic. But yeah, I guess maybe to bring it back around, the idea that there is or is not free speech on Twitter is probably moot. There is the amount of speech that they're allowed to have,
Yeah.
It's never going to be completely free speech, because completely free speech doesn't exist, as we've already touched on. There's several topics you're not allowed to talk about,
The idea of free speech is more like the government can't censor you from talking about, and we've expanded this over the years, religious, political, ideological kind of things that were being squashed in many ways by governments at the time that kind of came about. So it's not really. It's not. Twitter is not a harbinger of free speech.
Yeah, and really, our free speech laws kind of suck for that sort of stuff because free speech was really designed around a time when people were talking.
Yep.
The free speech was about police officers are not going to bust down the door to the bar you guys are hanging at because they heard you were talking about a thing you weren't supposed to talk about.
Yeah.
No one's coming to your house and arresting you because of the conversation you had with your in-laws.
Yeah.
But now the majority of communication is happening over services.
Yep.
It's the text messages from your phone provider. It's Facebook. It's Twitter. It's Reddit. Stuff like that. And those are all private companies, and they can do whatever the hell they feel like.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. They can do what they feel like. They can say this is not allowed on our thing, or you can talk about this stuff as long as it doesn't violate laws in the country in which the platform's hosted, and there or the country in which the person's sitting. There's some legal precedents for both. Yeah, I don't want to cut that short.
No. I mean, I kind of wrapped it up.
Okay.
It's almost a moot point. Those platforms are not designed for free speech. They'll let you talk about as much as they think they can let you talk about before it inconveniences them.
So that they can monetize it.
Well, monetizing or to reduce their risk of whatever, however you want to flavor it. They're going to let you talk about the things that they feel they want you to be able to talk about.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're a for-profit company. It's not like they're non-profit or something. That'd be an interesting thing, having a non-profit social media platform.
It'd be interesting just to find a social media platform that actually makes money. I think that's one of the things that came with Twitter, right? Like Twitter's never had a profitable quarter
year.
or something like that. Or at least like internally, there was some way it got flavored that it was like, look, Twitter makes no money from really doing anything. Same thing with like Facebook doesn't really make money if you took away the monetization of private data.
Yeah.
There's not really like letting me talk to you does not net money.
Yeah.
So like these companies really do just exist to find some other thing about you being on their platform to make money off of.
So I think we're going to skip the running your own media server today, and I'll add that to one of the other topics. But let's talk about Intel On Demand, Silicon as a Service. Okay. So Intel sells you a Xeon processor. It has 10 cores and 20 threads. And it has 5 efficiency cores and 5 performance cores, or 2 performance cores and 8 efficiency cores, right? Well, Intel, you can pay them a monthly subscription for the processor, and they'll unlock the other 10 cores. So you've got a 20 core, 40 thread thing. They'll make it so that you have more performance cores. So now you have 8 performance cores and 12 efficiency cores. And they'll allow you to have things like virtualization or something like that, depending on which of the tiers that you choose to pay per month. Now, this is not like a consumer grade thing.
Yeah.
But this is not the first time they've also tried to do this. They did this with Pentium stuff in the past. What do you think about that?
I really don't understand it from a business standpoint. Because in my mind, you are producing that chip that has those technologies on it. It costs you a certain amount of money to do the research and development. It costs you a certain amount of money to actually get the chip produced and shipped and all that stuff. But now you're saying, I spent all the money to make this chip that can do all this stuff, but I'm willing to give it to you at a lower price that will only use half the stuff in it. And then you can pay me extra to get all the stuff. Because if I was a consumer, I would just be sitting here thinking, okay, how can you afford to give it to me at the cheaper price if the cheaper price isn't also profitable? So like you're selling me this expensive piece of equipment that I've probably already paid for all of your stuff and you've gotten a profit margin. And now you want more profit for me to actually be able to use all the things in the thing I bought. Right. You know, like in certain software scenarios like AWS, I get it. Maybe I'm not using their resources until I spin up. So it's not costing Amazon more until I do more, which is why it costs me more. But you're giving me a physical product. You've already clearly had to have paid for the product. Like, you're just talking between being somewhat profitable and more profitable.
So I'm going to give you two takes on it. All right. One is kind of pro doing this. The other one is maybe pro doing this for nefarious reasons. I'm not actually for this. So don't anyone that's listening to this, don't at me, you know? But all right. So we're using me as Intel or the chip manufacturer. I am using a certain process, you know, and I have to have multiple processes to make different types of chips, like a Xeon with lower cores and Xeon with higher cores. You know, it's not exactly right. I know that the wafers, like you're looking at which ones come out well, but the overall the process has to be on different like nodes to be able to make it work a certain way, right? I can streamline that by just making everything the high-end chip or this mid-tier chip or whatever it is, and then just unlock features, but I sell it to you as a lower-end chip, and therefore it actually costs me less money to manufacture it. Now, before you comment on that, let me go for the other thing. And on top of that, my second take on this is, and it provides an avenue of revenue once people get locked into our platform. That means that they will consistently pay for that chip for the features that they need in a business setting over and over and over and over and over again. So the chip that cost you $1,000 actually costs you $3,000 in its lifetime.
Yeah.
So there you go.
No, so I can see both of those takes. You know, the second one was kind of what I was getting at, that like you're just trying to charge me for more money after the thing I bought for it. And I can see, and I cut that out of my rant because I didn't want my rant to be too long, but I can totally see number one as being like, okay, well, yeah, I don't have to necessarily do the R&D for 3 different chips that are all of different power. I can just make the premium chip.
Right.
But I really just don't believe that company would sell the premium chip at a loss, hoping enough people pay the monthly charge for it then to be profitable. So they're going to charge you, maybe not quite as high as they would have if there was no monthly, but they're still going to charge you a profitable thing. They're still going to make money off of me buying the quote-unquote cheap chip.
Yep.
When it's the same chip.
The $1,000 chip from last year is now a $5,000 chip that you just have to have a subscription to be able to unlock the premium features on.
Yeah, and I really just don't understand it. Because it feels like people are not learning their lessons. Because I'm going to tell you right now what I would do. I'm not advocating anyone else that would do this. But if I saw on the internet, oh, I can get this chip for $1,000. If I pay $30 a month, it actually has the performance. It's all unlocked of a $2,000 chip. The first thing I would do is I would type into Google, $1,000 chip jailbreak.
Yep.
And it's like, why would I get it on an enterprise level, maybe you're not as worried about that.
Yeah,
you've got better protection.
The customer they're targeting is like enterprise and medium to large businesses.
But look, if they'll let you buy a single chip, I can go and I can buy server pieces.
Yep.
I don't have to be a business to get my hands on some of that equipment. I'd put that in a gaming rig. I'd say, okay, why in the world would I pay for the $2,000 chip when I can buy the $1,000 chip, run some little ROM registry utility, and now I got a $2,000 chip?
Yeah, exactly. And here's the one of the things that it does hurt in the secondary market is people that are looking to pick up some of these old things and reuse them. That makes them less usable if they have to pay a licensing fee to be able to use it.
Oh yeah. Especially because the other side of this is that they're going to discontinue services of things to force upgrades.
Yes, absolutely.
They're going to be like, oh, it's been 3 years, this is no longer supported. You can no longer get the extra cores. We're discontinuing that. So they're forcing businesses, which again, businesses are more tolerant of because they're used to having to kind of swap their hardware a lot.
But then when the consumer that buys this secondhand on eBay gets it because they want to have like a great gaming experience on a less expensive, or they want to build their own home lab or something like that, that's really who you're hurting in the secondhand market. I mean it makes it so that you're making it like no, you need to buy our Core i7 to be able to game.
Yeah.
You can't have the Xeon chip. The Xeon chip was licensed only for this type of compute. And that's kind of the next thing that's going to happen as well. It's licensed for, like, you have to buy the subscription and you have to license it for the specific kind of compute that you're doing with it.
Yeah, that's wild.
All right. Anyways, end of the episode. We went over by 10 minutes. Gotta quit doing that. So this has been Season 5, Episode 15 of the Beer and Broadband Podcast. Thank you so much for watching. It's coming out on November 7th, 2022, and we'll catch you next time.